Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of the Growth and Gratitude podcast. I am so excited to have our first guest. Lori, you are the first guest of the podcast. I've only done them alone, so thank you for being here.
My pleasure, and what an honor.
Thank you. So today we are welcoming Lori Saitz. She is an expert in so many things, and I'm very excited about the conversation. I'm going to introduce you to her in a minute, but as you know, if you're a listener, we always start with gratitude. So I am going to ask Lori to share 3 things she's grateful for right in this moment, and then after, we want you to think about the 3 things that you are grateful for. Take it away, Lori.
Okay, I am so grateful for my circle of friends, because I don't know how I would get through and do life. I don't want to say get through, but how I would do life without them. I am just absolutely blessed to have an amazing circle of friends. Secondly, I am very grateful for this amazing fall weather we're having. I love the sweaters and boots and football. This is probably my favorite season. Thirdly, what am I grateful? I'm always grateful for peanut butter. It's good on sandwiches, anything. I mean,
That is such a great eclectic list. I love it. And I am just like our first conversation where we had so many things in common. I am on the same page with you on all 3 of those. I would ditto. I would echo all 3. And one of my favorite things I eat almost every day is a banana with peanut butter. So that I am so with you on the peanut butter. And we're low. I need to get some soon because you just reminded me. So thank you.
You never want to run out of peanut butter.
Never. Exactly. Definitely. It's a staple that must be replenished. So I ask everyone in my audience out there, please now take a moment, pause this if you need to, and think of and say out loud 3 things that you are grateful for. And we've talked before about all the scientifically proven evidence that gratitude practice helps us in every way in our lives, physiologically, mentally, emotionally, and more. So practice your gratitude. And now we're going to move into, I'll introduce Lori, ask her if I've missed anything, and then we're going to talk about, I'm so excited, mindful networking. Many people, myself included in the past, and sometimes even now, are terrified of networking or even just meetings, any kind of situation that can arouse some social anxiety. So we'll look at some great tips, and Lori has so much expertise. So Lori is the CEO of Zen Rabbit. She is an award-winning writer, speaker, broadcaster. She is a nationally recognized expert in using gratitude and meditation to manifest goals faster, which we talk about a lot on this podcast. She is on a mission to guide Gen Xers and all of us to a place of unprecedented passion, clarity, peace, and to rediscover their purpose so they can get back to a place of liking themselves and their lives again. And as a coach, as an executive coach and a life coach, boy, does everybody need more of that in this day and age. So I'm so excited about this conversation. She helps business leaders radically increase their profitability, their energy, and happiness while staying calm and grounded no matter what. And in the world we live in today, that no matter what is important to add. So Lori, have I left anything out that we want everybody to know about you?
That sounds great. I also host a podcast called Fine is a 4-letter word.
I love it. Fine is a 4-letter word. I love that. And it reminds me that, yes, when someone asks me how I am not going to say fine. Even if it's worse than fine, I'm going to just say the truth, right? It's usually a positive response, but fine really is a 4-letter word. I love that.
Yeah, we're conditioned to say it, but it's rarely true.
Exactly. It's usually something much more than that, whether it be on the positive side or the negative side. So let's be real with each other. I'm all for that. So one of the things that I love that it says on your LinkedIn profile, and everybody check out Lori out there, we'll give you her website, make sure everything's in the show notes, is that you are a stress eradication coach. I just love that. And a lot of folks are under a lot of stress, and some of it is very real based on the circumstances. Some of it, when we're honest with ourselves, is kind of self-inflicted a little bit. And I think that as we move into the topic of mindful networking, and this is again around any meeting you might have to go to, I'm sure the skills we talk about will even apply for one-on-one situations. it can create a lot of stress for people. Oh, I have to go to that networking event, whether it's in person or on Zoom. We know how important these connections are. We want to make genuine, authentic human connections, but we often feel we put this pressure on ourselves to be putting on our best show and, oh, I need to remember to tell people this or that about me. And I loved, Lori, when you and I have talked, how you shared that it's not really about that. And we can let go of a lot of that, those expectations of ourselves, and just be real and enjoy the moment. So we are going to break it into preparing for networking situations during the networking event or moment, and then follow up after. So Lori, let's talk about how do we prepare mindfully for those networking events?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of different ways to prepare. One is to make sure that the events you're going to are going to be worthwhile. Like sometimes you can't be in control of what you're going to. You're invited to a spouse's holiday party, for example, and you got to go. But if you're talking about networking for your business, investigate whether those organizations, those events are where your people are going to be. And when I say where your people are going to be, that doesn't necessarily mean where your clients are. It could be, but it could also be where people who could send you referrals are. And so it's doing a little bit of investigation beforehand and finding, because we all have limited time. So you want to use your time in the best way possible. And so being mindful of which events you're going to. I know when I first started out, when I first had my first business, I would go to every event. The chamber's holding an after hours, or the women in business is hosting a lunch, or there's a breakfast. I'm there. I was at all of them. And that was a lot of wasted time. I say wasted, but learned a lot about what to go to and what not to go to. However, let me share this with the audience that you don't have to do that, and investigate.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love also the idea of really being mindful about checking in about that. It really you can even do a meditation, close your eyes and see what your inner self is saying about this event. Does it really feel like something that is going to be worth my very valuable time and energy? And also remember that other people will have a lot of ideas about the things you should go to, and that doesn't mean they're right. Yeah. Whether it's your spouse or your friend or your colleague, you have to make that decision for yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that extends to outside of networking too, for any decision.
Yes.
I know I talk about that with my clients all the time, because we have all these outside forces trying to tell us what to think, what to believe, what to do. Yep. And check in with your inner voice. What is that telling you to do? Now, when I say that, a lot of people who have some anxiety around going to networking events are going to go, oh, my intuition's telling me not to go, because they're afraid.
Right.
All right. No.
Right.
No,
that's
you
different.
Don't get that excuse.
Exactly. You have to go to some things. If you're saying no to everything, then no. We need to back up and rethink how we're approaching this. So Lori, okay, so great. So be very mindful about which events you choose to go to. Choose some. Absolutely. We need to do that. And now let's say, so I've selected this event, my people are there. I realize that it's worth my time, but I'm really nervous about it. What do I do beforehand? I'm nervous, I'm anxious, I'm of course probably catastrophizing about how I'm not going to know anyone, and people there aren't going to talk to me, and they're not going to understand what I do. I'm not going to be able to say my elevator pitch correctly. Right? All these thoughts that are spiraling. And what do we do with that?
Right. Well, first of all, I want to say, wear something comfortable. So, because you want to look good, but you also want to be comfortable. Like, you don't want to be conscious of pulling your shirt up or adjusting your whatever, your pants. Put forth a good image, and don't feel like you have to wear something that's not comfortable. High heels, like nobody's wearing heels anymore, I don't think. So
agreed.
So that when you are in clothes that you feel comfortable in, you automatically are going to feel a little bit more confident. The other thing to keep in mind is everyone is feeling the same way you are. You feel like you're the only one, but that's not the truth. The truth is everybody's walking into this situation going, I don't know, are people going to like me? I don't know if I know anybody. And sure, some people will know other people, but they know those other people because they've been going to this event more than once.
Right.
And so next time you come back, you'll know some people too, but this is the first time. So
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I know I think Lori, the last time we talked, you said it can be great to think ahead of time about some questions that you can ask people. And the common questions that we often come up with are not great if we come up with them on the spot. So how can we be creative and kind of plan ahead and say, I'm not going to ask that tired old question. So what do you do? I'm going to ask people some interesting things, like get people to open up. What thoughts about that?
Yeah. So the typical go-to question for networking events is, what do you do? And it's the worst question because first of all, nobody really cares. Like they're conditioned to ask it, but it's not a great question because it doesn't really tell you anything. What people typically tend to answer it with is, oh, I'm a leadership coach, or I'm a financial advisor, or I run a restaurant, whatever it is. They respond with a title more than it doesn't tell you who they are. And this is the reason a lot of people don't like networking events, is because they're so superficial. People are just talking about the weather or the World Series or whatever it is. It's just surface stuff. So how can you ask better questions so that you can have really a much more interesting conversation, which will help you when we get to the third part of the networking trilogy, if you will. But my favorite question to ask people is, what are you excited about working on? Or what are you excited about in your life right now? That gives people the option to answer work-related or not work-related, because depending on the networking situation, somebody might not be formally working in an office. Maybe they're taking a break. Maybe they're in a transition. Maybe they're stay-at-home parent. And that what do you do question puts people on edge a lot, because they're like, oh, how am I supposed to answer this? But when you ask them, what are you excited about working on? You will see them light up.
Yep. I love it. I love it. What are you excited about working on? What are you passionate about right now in your life? I love that. And I love open-ended questions that allow people to answer about personal life or work life. And excellent. Okay. So part of the preparation, we're kind of dipping into, I think this is a good segue into during the networking, because part of the preparation is thinking about questions. And we don't want to give you a lot of questions where they feel scripted, but we're encouraging you to think about, listeners and viewers, to think about what questions would you feel comfortable asking, and how can you prepare those questions in a way that's different, that feels different, and that feels like you're wanting to make a more genuine, authentic connection and really hear about this person's life, and not just a title that is usually hard to understand, and we don't know what that means anyway. Sometimes when people are talking about their titles, I'll say, but tell me, what does that actually look like? Tell me what a typical day looks like for you at your desk or in your meetings, that sort of thing. Something where you can help people go deeper. So that kind of, go ahead.
I was going to say, so this is really about what you just mentioned about, let's step back for a second and redefine, what is networking? What does that mean? And a lot of people think networking means selling. Like they're going to go and they're going to sell their services, and they're going to look for people who want to buy those services. And that is not at all what networking is. Networking is starting a relationship. It is the first step in a relationship, and any business relationship may lead to sales, may lead to referrals. You don't know. Maybe you just find your new best friend. I don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. So it's a matter of going into the situation with an open mind. Like, hey, who can I meet here that could be a really cool person? That's it. It's all about starting a relationship. I don't know anyone, I don't know if you know anyone, Bridget, who's ever gone to a networking function and walked away with a signed contract from somebody they did not know before they got there.
No.
Right? It doesn't happen that way.
No,
So
that's so
take the
true.
pressure off
Yeah.
and walk into it with an open mind. Oh, who could I meet here?
I love that.
The other thing before we get into what you do once you're at the event to do before you go to the event is set a goal. What are you there for? Some events you go to because there's someone specific that's going to be there that you want to meet. And when you're standing in front of somebody at a networking event, you know, some people are really difficult to get a hold of on the phone, or they don't respond to email. But when you're in the same room with them, maybe you want to make a connection with somebody you've been meeting or trying to reach.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe your goal is to meet three new people, like set some kind of goal. The thing about doing this is, especially when you're very anxious about going to an event, you don't have to stay the whole time. Keep that in mind. If it's a 2-hour event, you don't have to stay there the entire time. When you set a goal, I'm going to meet this person, or I'm going to introduce myself to 3 new people. And once you meet those goals, you are free to leave. You can stay if you're still having a good time, but you can leave, but set those goals so that you know when you've accomplished something.
I love it. I love it. So and I love the permission to, I can leave early, because sometimes you just put that pressure on yourself. Like, I have to stay for the whole thing, but you've done your work. You've met your people. And I really love, okay, so to sum up, we're going to move into during the networking event, but so many valuable tips so far. So have a goal. I'm going to meet 3 people, or I'm going to, whatever it might be for you, kind of calm yourself about, it's not selling. You don't have some goal to have a signed contract or to have a customer. It's not about selling. It's about connecting. I like to think that. In fact, if you don't want to call it networking, don't call it that. I like to just think, I'm just going to go meet people. I'm going to an event where my goal is just to connect with people in whatever way we can connect. Remember that personal human connection is really the most important thing. That I've gotten so many gigs out of just making a really deeply personal connection. We talk about our kids or how much we love yoga or meditation and they might walk away not even understanding what I do. You know, but that's okay. I mean, I do my best to help people understand what I do, right? So make that connection, have a goal. I think you also would recommend, I know we talked about meditating before the event, and you even have a specific meditation for folks, like a 5 or 10-minute meditation people can do right before this event to get really grounded and centered and calm that anxiety.
Yeah, I do. I created a 5-minute meditation for people to help them feel calm and grounded before walking into an event. But even without that meditation, and we'll give a place where you can go and get that for free. But even without it, if you just take 60 seconds to take some deep breaths, inhaling all the way down to your abdomen and letting it go, just take some deep breaths, because most of us walk around all day, and yes, we're breathing because we're still alive, but we're not truly really breathing in and oxygenating our blood and our brains. So if you can do that, there's research behind how that calms your whole nervous system, and you can walk in feeling more confident.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another thing I would say that helps me as when I'm going into the event and getting ready for the event is I remind myself to focus on how much I'm genuinely interested in learning about other people versus like, I have to push my agenda out and make sure they know this about me, because I really do love people and hearing about what are their interests and what do they know about that I don't know anything about, and how can I just come from that genuine place versus I have to make sure everybody knows what I do and who I am. So go ahead. Yeah.
That is absolutely the best way to go into an event.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's true for all of us. I really do. I think we just forget to make that shift mentally. And so I think we've actually covered a lot about during the event, because it's hard to not dip into both as we're talking about preparing. We've talked about asking different, unique questions, really asking open-ended questions that allow people to share whatever they're most interested and passionate about sharing with us. That deep breathing, I think, applies during as well. I know I've had moments where, we can actually during go into a little bit of fight or flight. Like I've had those moments where I'm not talking to anybody and I'm looking around the room and I feel my heart racing, and I just remind myself, take a couple of deep breaths. or even, let's be honest, go to the restroom and take a couple deep breaths there and close your eyes and do meditation. Be like, this is not life or death. Why is my nervous system going into fight or flight? Nobody there is even noticing me. Right. And go back and be like, go back in and like, everything's fine. You know, there's a person that looks like a nice person. I'm just going to go up to them and ask one of my favorite questions. Right. So what else would you say about during this networking event? And I love that you said you don't have to stay the whole time. You're focused on your goals. What is your end goal? Try to keep yourself accountable to that. If it's meet 3 people, what else would you recommend for folks during the event to make it as enjoyable and as minimally painful as possible?
Yeah. Well, you just mentioned walking up to somebody and asking them some questions. And that can be a really anxiety inducing event or
Yes.
situation in
Yes.
and of itself. And I also want to share a couple of other questions that people could put on their list of things to ask. But first, so look around the room, because you are probably not the only one who's not talking to somebody. So can you find somebody else who is not talking to somebody, who's probably feeling really awkward and wondering, how am I going to get myself into a conversation? And walk up to that person and start talking. Say, hey, how's it going? Saw you standing over here. Is this your first time at this event? Have you ever been here before? Do you know anyone else? Or ask them the questions that you would want somebody to ask you, just to get into a conversation and kind of break the ice. Some people are there because somebody told them they had to go and they really don't want to be in a conversation.
Right.
And you can feel that. So I'm saying, again, follow your intuition. So let's say there are groups of people standing around. How do you break into a group? That's a little anxiety producing. But look around and see if you can find groups of 3 or 4 people and look at how they're standing. Because if they are open to having somebody else join that group, that circle or that arrangement of people is going to be pretty open. If they're closed and they look like they're having a powwow, don't go up to that group. But
Right.
if they're open, walk up and stand there for a second, because somebody's talking probably. So you don't want to interrupt their conversation, but you stand there, and when the person finishes their sentence, they will probably say, oh, we were just talking about, or hi, I'm so-and-so, and introduce themselves. The other thing that could happen is if you catch the eye of somebody else who's standing in that group and is not talking, they may turn and break away from the group and start talking to you, because maybe they're not interested in that conversation, or they notice you standing there. And it's our natural inclination to want to include others in the group, or at least not exclude them. So if they turn away, and then you're either way, you're in a conversation.
I love that. I love that so much. And it reminds me also that when we're in that group of 3, to keep that little extra antenna up about, is there anybody out there that we could bring in, and we're all in this together, help each other out. And I know you're reminding me of moments where I'm in that state and I'm by myself and I'm seeing all these people in groups, and just seeing someone make eye contact with you and smile. Maybe an invitation. Take it as an invitation. Like they're welcoming me into their group, and I'm just going to kind of ease over there and try to make a connection here. I love these are such great tips, and these can be such anxiety producing moments that bring us back to like high school, right? Junior high, the cafeteria, who am I going to sit with at lunch? Know that could be triggered, and it's not really so dire in that situation, but we are social animals and we do need to feel included and connected. And so a lot may be triggered in that moment. So stay calm and remind yourself that it's okay. You can, and it's okay if they don't welcome you into the group, and don't catastrophize or make too much out of. It might be that they're really nervous and they didn't notice you, and that's okay. Keep trying, hang in there. This is so good for building our resilience and our ability to get through these, not just get through, but make the most of these situations and do a little better each time. They get a little easier each time. We're building muscles here. So, okay, anything more about during the networking event before we move into the all important follow-up?
Yes. So a lot of times if you can ask an event organizer when you first get there, if there's an event organizer who's not frantically arranging name tags or doing whatever, like if they're in the midst of taking care of the event, you don't want to ask them. But a lot of times there may be ambassadors or board members or other people who are there, and they would love to introduce you to some people. And so if you get there and you say, hey, this is my first time here, I don't really know anybody, who's a good person for me to meet? Or this is the kind of person I'm looking to connect with. Who would you recommend? Could you introduce me? There's no shame in that. They are there and happy to do that. And then the last thing I'll say about this is that everybody is there for the same purpose, and that is to meet other people. And so again, you feel like you're the only one, but they are there to meet people. So they are open to meeting you.
Yeah, that's so good. That's such a good tip. And I love that it helps with the feeling less all alone in the situation. Right. You're not all right. alone. There are other people there who want to help you, who want to connect. It's just figuring out the opening. And just before we move into the next point, do you have more time, Lori? Because I know Yes. we're at the hour. Okay, good. This is so great. Just a short little story about how this applies to all situations. I was recently at my daughter's family weekend at her college out of state. And I was nervous because I was the only family member who was going to be at the faculty parent connecting meeting. And I wasn't going to know a single soul there. So I really did everything you said. I prepared, and I had my daughter give me, it's her third year. So I had her give me a list of all her professors. Mm-hmm. So that I could go up to be them and be like, oh, my daughter was in your Greek class. And that, I cannot tell you how that preparation really saved me, because of those first few moments, my heart was really racing, even though there's nothing at stake here. These are not even people I'm probably going to see again. Right. But I really wanted to connect with them, and I really wanted to hear from them about how's my daughter doing? What do you think of her work in your class, that sort of thing? And what do you think about her career goals? And so I had wonderful conversations. Thankfully, people had name tags, and I was able to, so that preparation of knowing what I was going to ask about and knowing who I was looking for, who were I did end up chatting with some folks who had no idea who she was, which is great. But I had my mission to talk to at least 3 of her former professors. And I had those anxiety moments, but I really think I practiced everything you recommended before and during. And so I loved when you and I chatted about this conversation that we were planning to have. And you said the follow-up is the thing that most people forget. We're like, right at the end of the event, it's like, phew, it's over. I can move on. I can go relax, watch my TV, whatever it might be. That we do need to decompress after if it caused a lot of anxiety. Take good care of yourself, have a reward for yourself, maybe planned after, that you really know you can enjoy and decompress. But that follow-up is so important. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, the reason you're going to an event is to meet new people and build relationships. Now, what are you going to do with that relationship after you've started it at the event in an initial conversation? But then what? Like, what happens after that? So most people leave the event, don't do anything. They are waiting for the other person to reach out to them, or I don't know what they're waiting for. But understand that it is your responsibility to follow up. Even if the other person says, oh, I'll call you, assume they won't. It is your job to do the follow-up. So we're taught to take a stack of business cards, or now we're doing everything electronically, but to get everybody's contact information, it's your job to get the contact information of somebody that you want to follow up with, or that you want to continue a conversation with. Because again, they may say they're going to do it, but they're not going to do it. So it's not even that important to bring your own business cards. It's way more important to get their information. You're the one that has to be proactive. So when you're talking about follow-up, get their information. And then I recommend following up with somebody within 2 to 3 days of the event. If you're at a conference, a week-long conference, or several days, and people have traveled from all over the place, you can give yourself a week, because people need to get back to their workspace and get themselves adjusted to being out of their office for a while. But really, sooner rather than later. And what do you do now in the follow-up? So this is why it's so important to have the better conversations, Because if you're just talking about the weather, what are you going to do when you're in the follow-up part? Hey, Bridget, it was great talking to you about the weather.
Right.
No.
Right. Right.
But if you had a conversation and you had a conversation about the best business book you've ever read, or if it's not a business situation, again, if you're at a holiday party and you just were talking about great books. Hey, I got a hold of that book that you recommended. I'm really looking forward to reading it. Can we set up a time? I'd love to talk to you more about it. And you're setting yourself up to have a follow-up conversation.
Yep.
Where you can get to know them even better. And that's where you can really share. If you know people who need this service, or if they're in a position to send you referrals, it's really all about, and this is very important, it's about finding out how you can help them. It's really not about how can they help you. And this is when you're in the event as well as in the follow-up. How can I be of service to you?
Yes. I could not agree more. How can I be of service to you? How can I help you? And not just in a professional sense.
Right.
You might have a book about parenting or about anxiety or about anything that comes up in the conversation. I love that. And I really never knew, I never thought to frame it as how to really think about how important it is for me to get their contact info. I cannot tell you how many times I just believe people when they say, oh, I'll email you, I'll reach out to you, I'll call you, we'll talk next week. And it's not that they're lying. It's just that life gets in the way. And
that's exactly it.
People forget, and people have so much going on. So it's my responsibility to get their information. It's my responsibility to think of a really genuine and appropriate way to follow up about a book we talked about or a podcast. That's why for people like us, it's great that we have a podcast, because it's like, oh, hey, you know how we talked about how you get nervous at networking events? I actually have a podcast episode on that and just wanted to share it with you. I always make a point to share to have so much free content out there. And I know you do too, Lori, so that we're sharing all our free content of value with folks. And then if they want more, then they might inquire about our paid services and products. So follow up, get their information. I love how you said, do it immediately. That was one thing I used to really not do. I would, at the end of the month, I would go back and find out, and it was like, they have forgotten about you, right? No matter how great the conversation.
It's really easy to forget about that follow-up piece. So what I also recommend is scheduling time to do it. When you schedule time to go to the event, like, all right, I know that next Wednesday, I'm going to this after hours from 4 to 6. And you're scheduling that into your calendar. Also schedule the time for follow-up. And if you're going to several events during the week, maybe you pick a time like Friday afternoons and you do your follow-up for all of the events at that same time. But whatever it is, make sure you're putting the follow-up in your calendar, because it is just as important as going. If you're not going to do the follow-up, then let yourself off the hook and don't go to the event.
Right. It's as if you weren't there, if nothing comes of it. Right. It doesn't mean that if work comes of it, as we know in our kind of business, sometimes you're building a relationship for years before, or no work ever comes of it. But again, they share with other people, and this person might end up being a great friend, or might end up doing a podcast with you. It's not all about money. It's about those connections, and how can we bring more value to the world by collaborating and working together. So just as we're doing right now, I just want to point out at this level that this is exactly what we're doing right now, that Lori and I having this conversation, this is only the second time we've met each other, but oh my goodness, we have so much in common. We get so excited talking about meditation and mindfulness and coaching people to be their best and to work through their barriers, right? And so we're doing it right now. There's no money coming from it at the moment, and there may never be, but that doesn't matter. This is this kind of connection that just helps us to grow and learn and meet more people who are doing some of the same things that we care deeply about. And that will always be beneficial. But I got an email about you that I could have easily just clicked delete. But I thought in that moment, well, let me check this person out. And I was so honored and excited that you were willing to come on the podcast, and that we're networking and connecting in the same way that we're encouraging other people to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people who are running their own business, people who are entrepreneurs are a little bit more inclined to do the networking because they're looking for clients. But people who are in corporate jobs maybe don't see the need as much. And I will say that it is just as important. There is nothing more important than your network, because
Yes.
one day when you need to find a new opportunity and you have a strong network, it's going to make it so much easier. This is a skill that our parents, at least my parents, never taught me. Most of the people I've worked with, their parents didn't teach them this skill, and you don't learn it in school. But the absolutely most important asset you can have is your network.
100%. And there is so much evidence and research and literature that proves that. I'm thinking of right now, Terry Bacon's book, Elements of Influence. He says that your network is almost at the very top of I think it's like your reputation. And if people think you're a person of integrity and your character is way at the top, but very, very close under that is your network, is how connected are you? And it's not just when you're looking for another job, you might need to partner with a cross-functional team and you have a strong relationship with folks on that team already that you never knew you would need to call upon, but you're just always building those relationships. It's always going to benefit you in some way or other in the future. And it's a really, really important thing to do for your career. And that internal network for folks in the corporate world, a lot of the folks I coach it's hard for them to see how important it is to build the internal network as well as the external network until they see that they don't have it and how detrimental that is to whatever their goal is at the moment. So I could not agree with you more. And I see that with all of my coaching clients and training clients. And so I'm so glad that you're sharing this incredibly valuable information, Lori. Is there anything that we've left out? Anything else that comes to mind?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's a lot that we've left out, but
Yes,
we don't
true.
have, it's not going to be a 3-hour podcast episode. So there are resources. I have some blog posts on my website that address some of this, and
Great. Well, we will be sure to include lots of resources in the show notes and in the YouTube description for this video. But Lori, where can people find you and find these great blog posts and all your wonderful content that we didn't have the time to share today?
My website is zenrabbit.com. So zenrabbit.com, and at my website, you can find links to my social and connect with me on LinkedIn. I love that. And that's the best place, zenrabbit.com.
And fine is a 4-letter word, is Lori's podcast. So you definitely want to check that out to get a lot more of her fabulous tips. And so we will wrap it up there. So now you know a lot about how to prepare for networking events, any kind of social event, truly anything. This could be an event at your kid's school. It could be a holiday party. We've got holiday parties coming up. Anything that creates even the slightest amount of social anxiety, how to prepare, how to do a great job of making the most of the experience while you're in it and being fully present for it and enjoying it, maybe even getting to the point of enjoying it, and then how to really mindfully follow up. So now you understand mindful networking, how to get the most out of it, how to enjoy it. Lori, I am so grateful that you took the time today to share this with me and our listeners. Even though this is something that I've done for over 30 years and taught and studied, I got so many new tips from you that helped me to be a better, I think, connector just on that human level. If we don't want to call it networking, it's connecting with other human beings. We are social beings. We need those connections personally and professionally. And I'm so grateful to you for being here.
That's what it's all about. Thank you so much for having me, Bridget.
My pleasure. All right. Bye, everybody. See you next time.